So as you can see, January continues to be as riveting as ever. So we've got these two also. I was going to see The Kid Who Would Be King, but I figure I should catch up on Escape Room real quick also. So, yeah. So we kind of went with a bit of a thriller vibe, I guess. I don't know. So let's just actually start with Serenity, because I'm sure people will be talking about it, whether they've seen it or not, because shit like this is gonna travel. So, obviously we're starting off with a title that, once again, I guess we're doing this whole thing where let's just title something the same thing as an already really recognizable movie, because that won't cause confusion at all. And you would think, oh, well, Serenity's sort of like a sci-fi thing, so they're not related, right? That's what you would think. So, as you probably saw, I'm gonna go ahead and, like, do the whole spoiler labeling thing, because it's like, I was gonna try to dance around it sort of like if you watch, the interviews that McConaughey and Anne Hathaway have been doing, where it's like, every time McConaughey's been on a talk show, which has been like, he's done through like the whole circuit in like the past 2 days. So you can tell they're desperate to try to get people to see this, even though I don't know that the celebrities promoting it is going to be what gets people's attention about it. So instead of dancing around it like they're trying to, it'd really just be much smoother for me to just say it. But as I've been saying, there's a good chance by the time you see this, you've already heard what exactly the hell is going on in this thing. But before we go into exactly what that is, I would like to go into the lead-in of what I was thinking and what I was feeling about it before we got to that point. Because obviously what happens in the second half may somewhat explain some things in the first half, but maybe not either. I don't know. So you might ask how you got people like McConaughey and Hathaway and Jason Clarke and Jaimin Hounsou and a number of people to sign on for this thing. And Diane Lane, who I was trying to think of. And I would say the answer to that is Stephen Knight, the writer and director, who up to this point has like a really good reputation. Like he's the creator of Peaky Blinders, which I know everybody loves. Then there was, he wrote Eastern Promises, he did Locke, that movie with Tom Hardy just in a car, and it was, like, amazing. He also created Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which is random, but okay. So he's going back, and sometimes he does random shit like that. Well, now he's going back into the I'm just gonna do random shit category, just all in one movie. So if I had to guess, that's probably what made people sign on to this, even if the script must have seemed insane. So even when you look at McConaughey promoting it, it's like it's not just that he's trying to bounce around a spoiler or anything, but it's like he just genuinely has no idea how he can possibly advertise this. So he's just like practically been a blank slate the entire time. So this is also another one of those movies that's kind of alarming because its release date got pushed. I think it was supposed to come out like September of last year or something. And when you start off towards the end of one year and end up in the January of the next year, somebody's worried about something. So, so when you look at this, and it starts off, we start off on a child's eyes, and then we hear like yelling, and then it very dramatically goes over an ocean, reveals the title, and gives us the most dramatic reveal I have ever seen of two dudes sleeping on a boat. And these two dudes are actually the setup for what McConaughey does, which is he's basically paid to take people out on a boat to fish. Only trouble is that he's got his own sort of Moby Dick situation going on here, and there's like one, I think swordfish, I think they said it was, that he is absolutely obsessed and desperate to catch, and he always gets this close and it always gets away from him. And he will try to get, if you have paid for his services on this boat, he will still pull a knife on you. Literally, it's the first scene of the movie. If you get in the way of him catching this fish. No matter how much Jaimin tries to intervene. So, that's pretty much the setup until, there's a couple of things. There's his fuck buddy Diane Lane, who basically gives him that whenever he finds her cat that likes to run around. And that's basically their thing. And you can tell with this Diane Lane scene that they're kind of trying to do, like I guess the fish thing is its own subplot. But then you've got this whole thing going on where they're, like, basically trying to do a film noir kind of thing. And you sort of get that sense with the Diane Lane scene, especially with, like, the way the whole thing is lit. Where it's, like, the only light coming in is through the blinds and all that. And they kind of do this whole dialogue that's supposed to give you that vibe. And Diane Lane really does have like a film noir voice. It's like just the way she says her lines. You can imagine this being in like some, you know, 40s Bogart movie or something as she's explaining this. The trouble is that the dialogue itself that she is saying like that is totally and completely nonsensical. So there's that. And the whole everything being nonsensical does not stop here by any means. In fact, in actuality, it's the tip of the iceberg. Because we haven't even been introduced to Anne Hathaway yet, who does come in. And there is, like... Once again, they're really trying to do the sort of femme fatale noir thing, but the trouble is that this would be... What Hathaway is doing here is basically what you would probably see. This might sound hyperbolic, but... it isn't really. When you look at Hathaway in this, it's sort of like what you would imagine a performance that would come out of a movie if somebody was doing like an Airplane-style parody film noir. So, because it's like, it's a little bit over the top and almost a little bit, I don't know that I can say self-aware. I wish it was. I really, really wish this movie was self-aware, but I don't think it is. It's playing everything absolutely as straight as possible, and maybe I don't know if that helps or not. I can't really tell. So what's already been established is, on top of McConaughey seeming a bit, you know, standoffish to a lot of people, especially her, because Hathaway, because she is his ex that's now with abusive boyfriend Jason Clarke, or abusive husband Jason Clarke, I guess I should say. Who is still in charge of their kid, having to watch all this go down. But this is also... McConaughey's that kind of guy where I was talking about the whole thing, how he will pull a knife on you no matter what, just to catch this fish. He's also the kind of really, really nice guy where he starts to blame John Hounslow for not being able to catch the fish, and the reason for this is because he's bad luck. And it's like, he says the line, ever since your wife died, things have gone to shit. And that's the way he talks to this guy that's like his mate, supposedly. So they part ways, but for some reason he keeps somehow working his way back into this story. Once again, one of those things that I guess makes sense once you know what happens in the second half, but I don't know. So, on top of this mystery feel they're going for, there's another character that is repeatedly introduced. I think the movie wants you to wonder desperately who he is. But not only could I really not care, but it almost kind of got annoying every time we saw this guy, because it was so, why is this here? So he walks up, and at first I assumed he was like a lawyer of sorts, because he's in like a really nice suit, or a regular suit, whatever. Compared to what everybody else is wearing on this island, it's a very nice suit. And he's got like a briefcase with him, and he is continuously trying to catch up to McConaughey, but always missing him. And he like moves in this really robotic fashion, whether he's removing his glasses or just walking. It's really bizarre. It turns out he's not like a lawyer of sorts like I thought he might be. He's a salesman. But that comes in significantly later. But the thing about this also is this character, as he comes in and out, the other thing that was making this really annoying was he's apparently constantly leaving behind business cards as he misses McConaughey. So, like, McConaughey goes into a store and the woman behind the counter is like, oh, by the way, this dude was looking for you. Or he goes somewhere else and somebody else says, hey, this dude was looking for you, you left his card. But apart from that, it's like nobody sees this dude. Like, nobody seems to know he exists when he's standing right there. Because it's like, McConaughey's getting in his boat and he's leaving, and the guy runs up and he's like, hey, dude! But McConaughey just keeps going as if he doesn't even know he's there. And then Jason Clarke and Anne Hathaway are walking away on the other side, and he's like, hey, do you know him? Just no response. The scene just cuts off. With him getting no answer from anybody. This happens like 3 times. Even one point where it was like the continuity error even screwed him over. Where it was another one of those cases where McConaughey's getting on the boat and he's running up and he's like, dude, I've got to tell you something. But it's like McConaughey is here getting ready to take off as the guy's running up. But when we cut back to McConaughey after one cut of this guy running, McConaughey's already like all the way out here in the ocean getting away from him. So it's like, okay, clearly this guy does not exist or something. Despite the fact that he can leave his business card behind for everybody else, and everybody else has interacted with him off-screen. Alright. So, it gets weird individually, too. Like, these things sound like a whole sort of big, weird, you know, batch is being cooked up here. But, no. Just every now and then some random-ass scene will just have you asking, what drugs is Steven on right now? So, one of those scenes in particular is one of the gratuitous McConaughey nude scenes where he just kind of... Diane Lane shows up and he just kind of strips off all his clothes and she's like, well, where are you going? It's like, I'm going to take a shower. What he means by that is he's going to walk out of his house, which is like one of those storage crates or something, and he walks up to a cliff and jumps off the cliff into the water and swims underneath. But the thing here is, while we're getting these, you know, nude McConaughey swimming shots, like we're watching some weird commercial or something, he starts to have a vision of his son. So he starts to see this kid, and it's like, I don't know, if McConaughey's just going for like a nude swim, that's a pretty odd time to suddenly start just picturing his son. Not to mention, we get these, once again, I feel like this is explained later, but the way this scene is shot when he goes to the cliff before he jumps off are these weird-ass camera movements that are like trying to make this as dramatic as possible. There may have even been whooshing sounds. We get a side shot, we get a behind shot, another side shot, and this kind of goes back and forth until he gets all the way to the cliff and jumps off. It's weird, and I surely to feel like maybe intentionally disorienting or something, but like I said, more annoying than anything else, which is kind of what sucks. So, then we get to a point where, continuing on with the son, he and Hathaway, or McConaughey and Hathaway are having a conversation about him, and there's been this weird thing going on where it almost seems like he and his son are communicating telepathically. Which is weird in itself, but there's more. So, once you get used to, like, is that what's going on here? Because that's kind of random. Well, then Hathaway starts to explain it to him further by saying that, and we've gotten these cuts before of him, like, the kid, we can hear, who is seemingly Jason Clarke and Hathaway arguing in another room. So the kid tries to escape them by, like, putting a blanket over himself and his computer screen, and he just gets immersed in his computer and shit. And this seems to be, it's cuts of this are cutting back to McConaughey seemingly, like, being contacted by him. So Hathaway just flat out says the words, he hears you through his computer screen. So then it's already weird enough. So you're thinking, like, okay, so this, it's not just a telepathy thing. It's literally through the computer they can somehow communicate. Through their minds. I don't know. But there's even more. There's even more elaboration on why this is. And this would be where, like, the spoiler line is. If you... I'm already gonna have it put in the title, so if you don't want spoilers and you've come this far, you're a fucking idiot, and I'm gonna say it now anyway. So, what's going on here? It turns out is, just right down the line, what is going on here is that McConaughey was in the Iraq War, and he was killed in 2006. And that's around the time, I guess, that Hathaway met Jason Clarke, who in real life is the abusive stepfather to them, because there was the whole noir plot of, hey, you know, Jason Clarke abuses us, can you kill him, please? Feed him to the sharks and all that. But this plot, in actuality, is the kid using the avatar of his dad inside a computer game that he has created to not only, I guess, bring his father back to life spiritually, but also as a means of killing his stepfather through the game as a means of coping. But it turns out he's also going to use this as more than just a means of coping. It's going to also mirror what the kid himself is doing, I think, to an extent, to a certain extent for sure. And so that's what it is. Everything in Serenity takes place inside of a computer game about fishing. Which sounds incredibly made up, but it's not. This kid made the most mundane game in history to live through. Like I said, I don't know if it's to just bring his dad back or if it's solely for the case of killing his stepfather. But then you think about all the sex scenes, how his dad is constantly banging Diane Lane, starts banging Hathaway again. And this, so it's like this kid is, I guess, programming this into his game in graphic detail. And so you kind of, I mean, I would say the kid's fucked up, but to the movie's credit, it establishes that pretty well, that this kid is, like, so incredibly far gone. So I don't know, like I said, because so you go back and you look at all the other stuff in the movie, assuming you're willing to accept that. Assuming you're willing to accept the video game thing. So it's like when you get the shots of, like, McConaughey, and it's like, I guess that's how, you know, certain points of view in video games, like, that's how it moves around the character. If that was the point, I guess. And then there's the whole thing of how things seemingly come together, like how no matter how much Jaimin keeps getting pushed away, he's always brought back because that's how the game is programmed. And that's how all this stuff comes together. So basically the second half of the movie is McConaughey somewhat surrendering to this and somewhat trying to defy the code within the game now that he's become aware of it. And so, as I'm saying, does this explain away the really weird, bad shit in the first half? Not really, because the movie overall is pretty poorly executed. If it was better executed throughout, and was intriguing enough before, like, because, I mean, the plot is in there, and it's decent enough. There's one particular suspenseful scene before we know any of that shit, and we think this might be the time he's gonna kill Jason Clarke, and, like, kind of waiting for that. There's, like, one genuinely suspenseful thriller scene within this thriller that ends up being inside a computer game or something, to where you could see, like, if more of the scenes worked like that, where they actually did feel like, you know, genuine, legitimate thrillers, and then this twist was revealed, but it all sort of somehow felt like it fit together, maybe there'd be something, like, we could, I would say admire it for its craziness, but I almost kind of do that anyway. But it's like, usually with a twist, it's always nice to kind of have admired it beforehand, before having to totally think back on it again entirely once that's all revealed, and it's like, this really was just kind of a standard borderline Skinamax movie before the twist was revealed, and by then the damage is already done, and the audience is already really not that on board with it, so when you introduce something this outlandish, once again, there's a part of me that wants to say, holy shit, ambitious. Or like, oh, yes, they just really went with, they just went in the most unexpected direction they possibly could have, that, interestingly enough, somewhat makes sense when you go back and look at some of the stuff in the first half. But even so, I don't know. It's a little too off the rails for something that was so mundane to start off with. So I don't know, and it does sort of get, like, and after a while it does start to feel like it even goes on too long, like, long after the twist is revealed, there's still, like, plenty of movie left of McConaughey just kind of driving around, and I guess thinking about it, and I don't know if it's, like, a religion thing, or what, like, the whole, as they talk about the kid as their creator, and it's like, what does it all mean? And it's like, I don't know. So what Serenity is trying to say is, we're all just in God's computer game or something. I don't know. I don't know what the hell he's trying to say. He may have just been trying to make a thriller with some weird-ass turn on it, like almost like a Cabin in the Woods sort of thing. Which, weirdly enough, is a feel that goes into the next movie, too. So I guess it's fate that I saw these two together. So I don't know. I could see this going in both directions. It's gonna be infamous for how crazy it is, how poorly made it is, all that stuff. But on the other side, I'm sure it could almost go down a legendary status for just how off the wall, what the fuck direction he took this. And it's, I don't know. I just really don't know. But I really just come away from it saying, I salute you for the effort, but I wasn't really feeling this. Even after the twist was revealed, it was just like, it seems like also that it should be crazier after that's revealed, but no, it's like after the twist is revealed is when it actually starts to get more boring than it was, which is a huge setback. But and on top of that, talking about how not well it's made. The whole thing is just kind of off-puttingly dark, too, like, aesthetically. Like, at first I was wondering if it was, like, the lighting in the theater or something, but, no, the lights were pretty... Like, sometimes there'll be, like, one light above me that, like, fucks shit up. But no, it was pretty much the way it should have been in there, and the movie just looks really, just really dark in general, so that was kind of off-putting also. But, so that's what was going on with this, and take away from that what you will, but, that's all I can really say about this, so we'll just go on to the next one. So Escape Room, I think, was technically the first movie of the year, but I went ahead and just... I felt like I could wait for it a couple of weeks, and it turns out, yeah, I didn't really feel like I was missing that much. So, I mean, I will say, to be fair, that it is, for the kind of movie that it is kind of a nice opener to sort of tell you what exactly is going on here, visually, instead of just, you know, laying down a sort of exposition thing right up front. Not exactly suspenseful, because we know, you know, it's to show, hey, this is what happens, this person's probably going to die, but this is what's happening, so, but apart from that, not that terrible of an opening. That is until we're introduced to the other characters, and this is, when you look at this kind of movie, and you know they're basically just here to die, and you know that backstories are only here to basically elicit sympathy, for when that happens. You feel like you can pretty much, you know, go through this quickly, but it is like a good 20 minutes of this hour 40 movie, and I don't know, and I know that's maybe not giving the movie enough of a chance, because obviously if they didn't do that, I'd probably be saying, you know, why are we supposed to care? They didn't tell us anything about the characters, but honestly, going as far as they can to give the people as much backstories as possible is kind of what does this movie in a little bit. Like, I almost wouldn't have minded if it just started like, I mean, obviously there's like a Saw influence, so it's like you could totally just start as a Saw movie, just start in the escape room and really with no need for introduction, but I suppose it is kind of a nice, you know, sort of eerie setup where they all get, you know, their individual boxes and all that. And we're introduced to some characters. There's characters where you can tell exactly how important they're going to be throughout the movie by how much of an introduction they get. So whoever gets the most introduction is probably the most important. Whoever gets the least introduction is probably going to die first. So our lead is a girl whose name I've already forgotten, as is all the characters, really. And the actors aren't exactly recognizable either. They're the ones where, like, oh yeah, I saw them in a supporting role in that one movie. The only one I know, like, immediately is the guy that played Tucker, or Dale in Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, is in here. But our main character is this girl who's, you know, really college smart and all that, speaks in all the big words. She actually has her roommate says, sometimes I wonder if you just make up words and you know I won't, you know, be able to look them up. I was kind of wondering the same thing after a while, after some of her dialogue in regards to the writers, but yeah, and apart from that, when they're not trying to make their characters sound super smart, the script is filled with masturbation puns. Riveting. So we've got, like, obviously the invitations to the escape room come in these boxes, so her roommate hands her the box and says, hey, have fun playing with your box. Then the escape room starts with the guy pulling the doorknob off and they get stuck in, and the guy's like, hey, keep holding your knob. And it's like, what the hell is up with... It doesn't matter. So when the writers are not thinking about masturbation, they finally get into the plot of the movie, which is the first room of, like, 5. And they have to go through it like levels. Once again, much like a Saw movie. Also, there's going to be not only inevitable comparisons to Saw, but also Cube, which actually came out like 7 years before Saw, this one, if you're unaware of it. And it's pretty much the same thing, also. It's actually probably more comparable to Cube than it even is Saw. But the thing is that the difference here, apart from most, you know, because obviously the escape room thing, which is something I only just recently learned about as, like, a thing, but this one in particular they know is important because they're going to get $10,000 if they can get out of it, which seems pretty small given what's going to happen to them, but obviously when it goes into the predictable directions that it's going to go, you can figure out why that is. So, it is an interesting enough setup, even though you can compare it to those other movies. There is something appealing about this idea of taking that whole thing of... A lot of times when you watch, like, horror movies or thrillers, characters will end up doing really stupid things, and you can pretty much describe it away by saying, well, they're panicking. So there's something about this whole setup that requires them to not only think rationally, but like have to do like these mind games in order to survive within an environment that is made to elicit panic. So there is something interesting here, and every now and then, like really few and far between, the movie does find it. But it also finds a way to get, you know, as dumb as possible along the way also. And it's also one of those cases where not only do we get all those introductions we really don't need to the characters, these are the kind of characters that will have time to comment, even in the most perilous of situations. Whether it be the whole thing of somebody gets called Rain Man, because they can add up numbers, and you have to have the guy that say, oh, that's offensive. And it's like, oh, yeah, they're like modern-day people, but they're about to die, too, so why don't they just get the fuck on? But then there's also the whole thing of, it's like Slumdog Escape Room, because of the whole thing of the way you get out, or the thing that gives you the answers, are getting memories triggered, much like the Dev Patel character in that movie. And that's what's going to happen to all these people, and that's going to be how we're also shoehorning backstories into this. The trouble is that in many of these cases you can tell how shoehorned in it is, because I don't really think they needed memories to get some of this stuff, or the particular memories that they show. So obviously there's no other explanation for this except, I wonder if their backstories and what it is that they're remembering exactly ties into why they're here and why they're all in the same place. What a fucking mystery. So, I mean, there is something to the rooms. Like, I do like the way the rooms are lined up. Like how the first room is all about, you know, fire and basically being in like a giant oven. And so the second room is like being in a cabin that's got this really sort of wintry landscape with, you know, the trees and the snow and all that. It's like they're in Narnia or something. A really, really perilous Narnia. And then but still also there's the third place, the Upside Down Bar. And this is the time where I was like, okay, maybe they have something here. Maybe they are getting more creative than I initially gave them credit for. I mean, they are still doing the whole thing, like some old tropes, like using the old song, like they use Downtown, but like they slow it down and they make it skip, all that stuff, like the Quicksilver Girl thing and the Strangers and all that. So that kind of feels old, but then at the same time, the way they shot some of this, like how the room is upside down, and every now and then we get a shot of as if the room is right side up and they're like hanging off it. And it's like, if the scene had kind of been shot more like that, it probably would have come off a bit gimmicky, but still would have made the scene a lot, you know, cooler than it ends up being, but just showing it the normal way. So you do see like those hints of inspiration in there throughout this, but they're always immediately bogged down by a huge contrivance or something incredibly predictable. And so, like when you talk about, like, the contrivances, like the moment where, there's a moment in the wintry setting where they have to use body heat to get to a key, and it's like, that's something that probably felt a lot more clever on paper than it actually seems in execution, unfortunately. But it is, like, this is one of those movies that's, like, a product of a screenplay contest where it's like, whoever can fit the most contrivances in one screenplay will get this made by a major company, and wide distribution at that. So even if your cast is all a bunch of, you know, usually side people. Now, of course, that doesn't usually matter because, you know, concepts like this usually speak for themselves, selling-wise, but, you know, even so, I don't know if more talented people or actors could have brought this together with the script that they have. Like I said, there's too much idiocy going on, and then by the time it gets to the end, obviously there's like, not only is it an everything must be connected thing, which we see coming from a billion miles away, but also the whole, obviously there's going to be like one or two more twists, but it's like, it's all shit we've seen before, it's all shit we could see coming. Honestly, I'll be surprised if most audiences don't see the entire ending right before their eyes as soon as the concept starts, as soon as the movie starts. Even if the concept is just said to them, they may not even have to start the movie to get what the ending they go for is. So, yeah, if you've seen a movie like this, you've seen this movie at least 5 times already. So, but every now and then there's a creative idea, but not near enough to make up for the predictable dumbassery that follows it and takes it to the end. So that's the way I mean. Kind of a letdown, because right in the middle there, around the time of the Upside Down Bar scene, I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna start giving this, you know, more of a chance now. Like, it's kind of winning me over a little bit, but then just as I hit that point, it got dumber than it had ever been and didn't stop. so that sucks. So it does make the first half look better now, though, by comparison. So it does have that. But I mean, overall, no, not really. This doesn't really work. So that's going to be it for this. Right after, I think I might do that Versus I've been putting off forever, and then the reviews for The Favorite and If Beale Street Could Talk, and Can You Ever Forgive Me? And then I think that will finish out 2018 for me, I hope. So until that stuff, that's it.